Welcome, Jacob.
Thank you very, very much. It's an absolute great pleasure to be with you today.
So, how did you originally get involved with the International Light Association?
Wow. Um, Many years ago, sometime in the 90s, I was contacted um, by a woman. She has passed away now. I can't remember her name at the moment. She contacted me from the UK and wanted me to come to England and do one of the keynote addresses at a conference that she was doing. And I traveled to England before the conference. I was involved in many of the speakers that they had asked to be there. Um, and that, I think, was the beginning of connecting with other people that were involved in ILA, which I later became more involved in as I learned more about it.
Yeah, and so why did you get more involved with it? I mean, did you find really attractive about the association?
People, the most important therapeutic tools we have is our humanity.
Hmm.
When you contact other people, and they say birds of a feather flock together, other people who truly care for each other, who truly care about helping others, which is really what health and wellness is all about. Those are the people you want to hang around with. And so ILA for me is a group of pioneers, each in their own way uncovering the power of light initially, now the power of sound, and perhaps most importantly, the power of togetherness and oneness. And so being in contact with others whose life was moving them in the same direction as my own, it was a blessing to be home at last. And
Hmm.
so that's what ILA was for me.
Yeah, for me too. And I shared that recently in an interview that it felt like coming home, a
Yeah.
family. And so that's why I've been involved as well with the ILA. And yeah, so many wise people, I think, including yourself. And so you've been one of the inspirations behind my involvement as well.
Thank you.
So I remember at one of the conferences that we actually spoke briefly at, and you suggested that I should get glasses, which was interesting. I don't know whether you remember that particular conversation, but um, now it puzzled me at the time because while I figured there must be a good intuition behind it because of your own experience of then moving away from needing to use glasses yourself. Um, it surprised me that you would suggest that maybe it would be helpful for me to get some glasses. So I just wanted to maybe work through that. And uh, do you remember the particular conversation?
I don't remember the conversation, but I have a strong intuition what I was sharing, which is a little different than maybe what you heard. When most people think of glasses, they immediately think of the kind of glasses that you put on to make things clearer, to be able to see to drive or any number of other things. One of the things that was shared with me and that I discovered for myself after using it thousands of times is that there are glasses that are not used to improve eyesight, but are utilized to reduce stress in hopes of preventing vision deterioration. And if used at certain times, it can reverse vision deterioration and improve eyesight. So, for instance, if you were a runner and you like to jog, you wouldn't go jogging in a pair of slippers or in a pair of sandals or in a pair of loafers that you might wear to go out to a social gathering. They have special shoes, tennis shoes, running shoes, whatever you wish to call them. And when you get them, they not only protect your feet, but they give you better traction. They have enough padding so there's less compression on your spine and on your joints. And over time, they help to not only improve your performance, prevent possible injuries, but preserve the makeup of your body. Try to imagine that the reason most people end up needing glasses to improve eyesight is because we spend all day reading, working on computers, looking at our mobile devices, and on top of that, we spend most of our life indoors. So the two main reasons for eyesight deterioration, the reason eyesight deterioration occurs in most cases, because hardly anyone is born needing glasses, is because the visual field, which is very broad, is compressed into a small area like a mobile device or a computer screen. And the eyes are not only the windows of the soul, but they have a special relationship with light. Light catches the eye, causing it to turn toward the light. The body then readjusts itself, and what's catching our eye is looking for us, just the opposite of what we've been trained, and literally guides us on the next step in our life's journey. And so the way we utilize our eyes is so unnatural, even though we call it normal, that the stress, because of the compressed field of vision, because our three-dimensional vision is reduced to two dimensions when we're reading or looking at a screen all day, and the ingestion of poorly designed indoor lighting creates, as my dear friend John Ott used to say, malillumination, just like malnutrition if you were eating improperly. So now we're beginning to realize that the energy that our cells produce for all their metabolic functions, cellular repair, and so on, that energy is gotten primarily from two sources. We used to think it was just one source, the food that we ate. Now we know that the food we ingest, if it's good quality, provides us about a third of the energy necessary for our cells to function. But 2/3 is through the ingestion of light by way of the eyes. So the eyes are a very profound aspect of our makeup. I see means I know. So when I spoke with you about glasses, I wasn't speaking about glasses that are used to compensate for nearsightedness, farsightedness, or astigmatism, utilized to make things sharper and easier to see. The glasses I was talking about I primarily use for reading, close work, computer work, and they are so mild that most eye doctors would never even think of prescribing such a mild prescription, but they are like a wedge. You know, when people go into the forest, and let's say they're going to cut down a tree, they want the tree to fall in a certain place so it won't possibly injure other things. And so they use a wedge of wood in a certain location to guide it. These wedge prescriptions cause your visual system, your brain, every part of you to go, ah, thank God I'm home. And in relaxing the system, the stress that is responsible for vision deterioration is significantly reduced, performance is elevated, and often by utilizing these kind of preventative stress reducing lenses, we can avoid vision deterioration and having to wear glasses for many other kinds of things. And so the lenses I mentioned to you were to increase performance and as a preventative tool.
Excellent. That really helps. And hopefully that helps other people too. How would one get such glasses?
Well, first of all, you need to go to an optometrist who is called a behavioral optometrist. And behavioral optometrists, in fact, the optometrists that are part of ILA, Larry Wallace, Ray Gottlieb, and others, they are behavioral optometrists. In other words, they are interested in preventive vision care, vision training to enhance visual function, so that whether you're driving, sitting in the classroom, playing tennis, or playing golf, they are giving you something that's going to optimize your potential, reduce the stress level, which is responsible for about 90% of disease. And why it's so critical is that vision deterioration is the biggest health epidemic in the world.
Hmm.
That's why you see so many people wearing glasses. So you need to find a behavioral optometrist, and there is a website, covd.org, which has a listing of all the behavioral optometrists in the US and internationally, and also the College of Santonic Optometry. All those optometrists are also behavioral optometrists and can be contacted because they prescribe in this way as well.
Excellent. Thank you. You also mentioned you said two-thirds of your nutrients, I think,
Yeah,
comes from the light. So does
right.
that potentially,
It's not the nutrients, it's that the light traversing the eyes triggers the mitochondria, the engines of the cells, to literally increase the production of energy, which is called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And that is the fuel that your cells utilize for all of their functions. And so food can increase the mitochondria's ability to create ATP, but light is even a more potent stimulator of that function.
hmm. I'm thinking of people who have been reported to live on light, without eating. And in fact, I recall, I think you did for a period of time, in fact.
I did that for 9 weeks. I did not eat for 9 weeks uh, at the end of 1994 into the beginning of 1995. Um, And at the time that I did it, it wasn't with the idea of living off of light. I didn't even know that back then. It was just I had gone to Australia to do a series of talks, which I did every year for many years. And I was in Adelaide, and the person who was hosting the event picked me up at the airport without going through the whole story, told me he didn't eat. Then 18 people that were part of this event that I did over a weekend also didn't eat. I went from there to Perth, and I mentioned this to a friend of mine, and he said, God, I'd heard about this forever. Can you get more details? I called them. They faxed me their protocol. I did it, and that's how the discovery came about that we could live probably directly off of light. And it wasn't until a conference, an ILA conference, I don't know whether it was the one in Vienna or one after that, that I met a man named Peter. I don't remember his last name right now. I was one of the speakers, and he had done a documentary about this.
Mm.
He didn't know of me, I didn't know of him, but we had a wonderful connection when he found out that I had experimented with this in the 90s. So it was good to do the experiment and to have a direct experience of what occurred, not based on what somebody said or what was written about, but what is my own direct experience of what's going on here and how am I impacted? And why that is so important is that is the reason that I utilize light and different portions of the spectrum that we perceive as color in the way that I do. I wasn't trained to utilize that way, but as I started working with more and more people, what became evident is that many of the models that we are taught, they're like cookbook approaches, which are a nice place from where to launch an investigation. But sooner or later, you begin to see that there's certain aspects of these models that don't quite make sense. And so over time and working with people, I found that my direct experience was moving me in a different direction. And boy, was that important for me, because what led to a use of color that was impacting visual performance and learning in the classroom went into an area of utilizing color to optimize your life, not just your eyes, not just to fix a problem, but not to fix anything, just to optimize your ingestion of light so that the spectrum of light we all live under could optimally impact us in the very best of ways.
Yeah. So I guess that's a good segue into tell us a bit about the way you use color uniquely, particularly the spectral receptivity system.
Yeah, it's very simple. I was trained initially in a science called syntonics. Syntonics was based on the work of a Dr. Harry Riley Spitler that began for him probably around 1917 or 1918. He did a lot of explorations. And then the College of Syntonic Optometry was founded in 1933. Now, today, they teach uh, a more abbreviated version of what Spittler was talking about. But I remember doing a keynote address at one of the Syntonic conferences because I used to be president of the organization. And this may have been in Puerto Rico. And I remember starting out by saying, do you think if Spittler was living today, he would be doing the same thing he was doing in the 1920s? Now, nobody answered. But the reality of the situation is 99% of all the techniques in medicine that we use for healing, 99% of those that were utilized 90 to 100 years ago have mostly been disproven. And so they're obsolete. They're not utilized any longer. And so the question for me was, when a genius like Spittler or Dinshaw or any of the people that worked in this field develop something, it's a magnificent opening for those that follow them. But I don't believe they are developing it, so you use their system. What they are doing is developing new pioneers. They want you to develop the next level of it, the next level of it, the next level of it. So for me, Syntonics was a beautiful beginning and certainly has value for optometrists that are working with light. It seems to be very effective for that particular application. But I started discovering certain things about color that I could not deny. For instance, if you ask anyone what their favorite color is, they'll tell you something, and it's usually different from one person to the next, or what colors they don't like. Now, everyone's got these theories. This color does this color does that. That's like saying everyone will respond the same way to eating an apple. Doesn't make any sense. Or everyone will fall in love with Andrew Barrett. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know.
It just wouldn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense. And it's important that rather than going by the mind's ideas, we use our common sense and our own direct life's experience to guide us. And so I started noticing that people seem to be very receptive to certain portions of the spectrum, what we call colors, and allergic to other portions. I didn't know what that was all about. And in the late 70s and early 80s, one of the sciences that was very prominent was biofeedback. People would buy devices, hook themselves up, that it would measure muscle tensions, breathing, galvanic skin response, things like that, and would let them have feedback about how to get more relaxed. I bought myself one of these elaborate systems, but rather than utilizing it to get more relaxed, I would hook up my patients and I would either tell them to think about a color, imagine they were seeing a color, or actually looking at that color. I discovered something fascinating. When they looked at the colors or imagined the colors that they were comfortable with, their system went, ah. There was a sigh of relief, and their physiology just calmed down. But when they imagined or looked at a color they didn't like, their system got activated in the same way as your body gets activated when you're having a stress reaction. So I started doing that with hundreds of people, and I kept seeing an interesting pattern. Everyone had different colors they were receptive to and different colors they were allergic to. It wasn't a function of the color, it was a function of that person's relationship with the vibrations from which we perceive color, that part of the spectrum energetically. Over time, and working with hundreds and eventually thousands and then tens of thousands of people, I started to notice that the colors we were uncomfortable with were vibrationally related to some unresolved trauma. Now, initially, I thought, oh, something happened in their childhood, because that was the way we saw it in the past. Now I've come to realize that many of these traumas that we say are unresolved, we never experienced them. They were experienced by our predecessors, our ancestors, and that energetic constriction, if you will, or limitation has been passed on from one generation to the next. You see, when we have an experience with another person, we think it's about that person. But the language of the universe is energy or vibration. And so when we connect with something or someone or a situation, there's either resonance or there's dissonance. That resonance or dissonance, which is energetic, is often not visible. It's not audible, but your system is tuned into it because it is related to our survival. We have to be able to accurately sense something that may be dangerous as well as something that may be advantageous for us. And so what I began to notice is that the colors that someone was unreceptive to or had sort of like, I don't want that, those particular colors that we perceive as a part of the spectrum, the foundation of that perceived color is a vibration that when we ingest it, something in our system goes, even though we don't know what that is. And so when I first started utilizing this system, I discovered very quickly how not to use color. Now, keep in mind that when I was doing syntonics has a model. You use these colors 20 minutes a day. Now, I always wondered, who came up with this 20 minutes? Why is it 20 minutes? And when I started using color in a different way, I remember this person that came to my practice in Florida. I gave them a certain set of filters I wanted them to use. They had a treatment in the office that day, and they never returned. I didn't know what happened, But about a year later, I was taking a walk into town from my home. I lived in a little small area called Coconut Grove. And lo and behold, I see this person walking toward me. And it's this person. And all of a sudden I said, "What happened?" And he said, "Oh, that session that I did in your office for a couple of minutes, that really triggered up some awful stuff in me that took me months to deal with." And all of a sudden I realized, oh my God, you can utilize color like a hammer, or you can utilize it homeopathically, where a little microdose can have a huge, huge impact. And so I started using color in a very different way. And it wasn't about a person using one color or three colors or four colors. It was about utilizing all of the colors of the spectrum in a very specific way. What I discovered early on is the moment we start thinking, which is mostly worrying, or we put effort into something, something that is fundamental to our life, which is called the respiratory cycle, gets constricted. Now, when you aren't able to breathe deeply, easily, it causes people to feel stressed. Why? Breathing is the final thing that goes before we die. The breath is gone. And so I was wondering, what is it that causes this constriction in the breath? And I started realizing that the ability of the system to expand and contract is so fundamental that anything that triggers stress restricts it. And anything that facilitates ease expands it. One of the things I notice is that the moment we start thinking, the breathing is held. When thinking is not there, the breathing is expanded. And so what I began doing is, when I work with people today, which is online because people are contacting me from different part of the world, I do a color analysis. What's a color analysis? I take them through a very simple visualization to see how they respond to certain colors to all the colors of the spectrum. Then I send them a little kit, which I've created, which has 13 pairs of glasses that cover the spectrum from one end to the other, including purple, magenta, and scarlet, which are different amounts of the opposite ends of the spectrum together. And then I've created a little simple protocol. So day one, they'll take maybe ruby and red, and they put these glasses on, and I instruct them, if the weather is good, to sit outside. So we use sunlight as the light source. They put the glasses on, and the only thing they're instructed to do is just breathe. Something we're doing all the time. The moment they feel the slightest bit of discomfort, remove them. Wait a couple of minutes and then take the red. Do the same thing. And they write down how many breaths they were able to take before they felt uncomfortable. And then the next day of the week, and by the way, this whole thing takes 30 seconds, not 20 minutes, a few seconds. And so the next day, let's say that was Monday, on Tuesday, they would do orange and yellow. And every day they do two colors, one day they use three. And they just note how many breaths they're able to take before they feel the slightest bit of, I don't want them pushing through. I don't want them to just keep doing it so they get through it. I want them to notice that there's a part of our system that knows everything and sees everything and is aware of everything. And it is not the mind, it is a field of awareness common to all living humans. And what I want them to do is to just fine tune their awareness. So when their body says it's okay to open the door for this person, or no, I'm not going there, that we pay attention to that, that we don't mentally push through, but we actually pay attention to this sense of knowing that we all have. And most of the time, they spend less than 1 minute a day working with these filters, and the responses are profound. And if the first week they're not able to utilize any of the colors for up to 5 seconds, they repeat that week again. The only time we go to week 2, which is anywhere from 5 to 10 seconds, is when their system has opened on its own and is able to take in each of those portions of the spectrum with ease, and it expands our sense of ease and comfort and so on. Now, I've been utilizing this approach for many, many years. And what occurs over time is as people get more at ease with the different colors of the spectrum, utilizing them in this way, they become more comfortable with the things in their life, the incidents, the people, and so on, that used to feel uncomfortable and catalyze stress in their life. So the stress reduction reduces dramatically. Now, let me share with you a little piece of science that relates to this. In the very early 90s, I visited Fritz Popp in Germany at his research center there, his clinic. And we were having lunch one day, and I shared with him just what I've just shared with you. And his jaw dropped. And he said, "Oh my God." And I said, "What is it?" He says, "I've never heard anyone talk about it in this way, but I discovered something interesting, not with humans, but with the cells of the body." And he said, "What I discovered is that when a cell is in an optimal state of wellness, it responds to all colors exactly the same way. But when it is out of balance, it responds selectively. It likes this color, but dislikes this color." And all of a sudden, it was like, oh my God, what he's discovered cellularly is exactly what I have found with people themselves, which, of course, the body is probably 40 to 50 trillion cells. So the use of color in this way is not designed to fix. It's not designed to heal. It's designed to gradually allow the person's receptivity to the full spectrum of light to occur so that when they go outdoors, they can take it in naturally from the sun. Now, I want to tell you another piece of this. After I do a color analysis with them online, just the way you and I are speaking now, I take them through another visualization. I'll share with you what it is. I say to them, I want you to imagine you're in the comforts of your own home. You're in your bedroom all by yourself. And in your bedroom, you have a floor to ceiling mirror. I want you to imagine you're standing unclothed in front of the mirror, looking at a reflection of yourself in the mirror. Now, look into the mirror at the reflection of your toes and slowly allow your eyes to move from the toes to the middle of the foot, to the heel area, up to the ankle, then the lower calf, the mid calf, the knees, and so on. I want you to allow your eyes to scan slowly from your toes, your entire body. Anywhere that you notice is a place where you had an accident, an injury, a surgery, an infection, or a place where you hold your stress. Call out that area for me. And then whatever they call out, I just put what they said. And I don't want them to tell me what happened. It doesn't make any difference to me. I just want to know the area of the body. And then I have a chakra chart. And so I just insert whatever they said in the chakra associated with that. What an amazing discovery I made. If their receptivity to red and orange, for instance, is reduced, that's the chakra of the body where they develop problems. And the relationship between the colors they're unreceptive to and the segments of the body where they develop problems, the relationship is really, really high. I mean, much of the time, it's a match. And so what's fascinating to me is perhaps what came to me just by asking people what colors they like and dislike. Maybe it's an entirely new way of looking at the human energy system and the body as a whole. Maybe so much of our stress and disease is because parts of our system are left in the dark. You see, I always wondered when I first heard about the chakras, why do they have different colors? I couldn't find anything scientific about that. But when I started working in this way, I saw this incredible relationship that was almost like a match. And so I have been working with people in this way for decades. And the result is very powerful because when our system is able to embrace the full spectrum of light, what I have found is we become more able to embrace the full spectrum of life. In other words, less things in the world disturb us. When less things disturb us, we begin to become unconditionally accepting. And when that occurs, the level of stress reduces very dramatically. and our health starts to optimize. So, my way of utilizing color is nothing to do with an idea I had, everything to do with observation, empirical observation. How does a person respond to one color or the other? And initially I thought, oh, I just have to give them the colors they're allergic to. No, doesn't work. That can just trigger overwhelm. We don't want to do that. We want to do everything by invitation only. This is not confrontive. This is embracive. Everything is done with gentility because you never get a second chance to make a first impression. And so when you're working with someone and you are going to introduce them to something, that introduction needs to be in such a way that they feel, I can really trust Andrew. He's looking out for my welfare. He would never violate me by giving me more of something than I actually need. And so it's not about doing things fast. It's about allowing the system to notice its own mechanisms that guide us. Now, let me share one more thing that I think is important. We've all been trained that we are more evolved than the other species of the world because we have something called a mind. Very few people actually begin to investigate whether all that is true or not. Do we have to think, which is most of the time worrying, in order to solve problems? Or is the solution of these problems, as well as all the discoveries that science makes, does that actually begin with an intuition? Now, when people think of intuition, they think of something that's not scientific, or they say, oh, it's just a feeling. You can't really trust that. That is the furthest thing from the truth that you can imagine. Most people don't know what the source of the intuition is. We say it's more a right hemisphere function and so on, and the left hemisphere is more an analytical function. But I discovered something about vision, which is miraculous. The retinas of our eyes are primarily comprised with different kinds of cells that respond to light. Most of the cells that, or the only cells I was trained about when I went through my medical training, were called rods and cones. Rods were used at night and cones were used during the day. And so when you go to the eye doctor and they put you behind the instrument and they say, Andrew, is it better number 1 or number 2? They're asking you to only respond with the cones. The cones only make up 5% of the photosensitive cells, and they are all jammed into a tiny area called the macula. The cones are the eye's representative of the mind's eye. The thing that says, do I like this or do I not like this? They are the scrutinizing part of our vision. So you wonder, well, what's the purpose of that? The purpose is simple. When we think there's possibly some danger, then we have a careful look. Now let's talk about what really gives us the information. 95% of the cells on the back of the eye, which are called rods and used in low light levels, these cells are so sensitive. Well, let me see if I can phrase it differently. They are the most sensitive light detecting technology ever developed. There is no technology in the world that can detect light levels at the level of our rods. Now, you know, in quantum mechanics, when they speak about the primal energy of life, that energy is light. And light is packets of information, vibrational, formless information called photons. A rod can detect and respond to a single photon. Now, that is the far reaches of quantum mechanics. In other words, our eyes are able to detect and to respond to things that are invisible, truly invisible, because photons cannot be magnified enough to see them. They are totally formless. So when you think about intuition, which is a higher level of seeing, and Jonathan Swift, who said real vision is the ability to see the invisible, our eyes are designed specifically to detect the invisible. We don't have to wait until the tiger is upon us. And we see this with animals in the wild. The instant they sense anything, before they have any idea what it is, they don't sit there and say, am I in denial? Hell no. Something runs them away at the speed of light. They're not running, they are being run. They are moving at speeds beyond their capability because something saying it's not safe. So when we talk about vision and when we talk about aspects of light that are comfortable and uncomfortable, we're talking about a system that is natural for human beings that guides them. It is the primal way we are guided through life. You know, when an animal is sleeping and it senses something, it doesn't immediately open its eyes. An ear goes up. If it continues, two ears go up. At a certain point, the eyes open and the head moves in the direction where they sense something is. If whatever it is moves closer, the animal goes, starts to growl or do something. So we have the same system. And it is in the sensitivity of these systems that really provide us the insight that causes the mind to look in one direction or the other. So it isn't the mind that makes the discoveries. It's the insightfulness, the intuitive nature of our visual system that guides us to look in a certain direction for something. We don't even know what it is. So my work with color is about awakening awareness. Awareness is always there, but we have been so conditioned to focus on mind that we don't realize that it is not mind that sees clearly, it is something behind that. Because, for instance, all of us are aware when our mind is chattering. I mean, we've been led to believe that it's our mind. I can change my mind. I don't mind it. But the reason we are aware when the mind is chattering or worrying is because there's an aspect of our humanity that is not only aware of the external world and aware of all the sensations internally, but that same aspect of our humanity is aware when the mind is chattering. We are not the mind. The mind is an accumulation of experiences and compensations that have been going on probably from the beginning of time. We are a field of awareness with no point of view. It doesn't want this and dislike this. It's unconditional. It just notices. And so the way that I utilize color, which is to come to an unconditional state, is to begin to see and witness from that field of awareness. And when that occurs, that is our awakening. That is the enlightenment that I call delightment.
Very good. So, do you find that because, say, initially uh, you're working with a system where you could detect the body's responses, but now with the system that the receptivity system, people do it by themselves. Do you find that some people are so out of touch with what's going on for them that they're not sure about,
The,
yeah?
the answer is yes. Let me see if I can explain. All human beings encounter aspects of life that they haven't experienced before. It's sort of like if I said to you, Andrew, you ought to take a walk in the forest at night. You'd say, what? I'm not going into the forest at night. There's wild animals. I haven't been there. Da, da, da. And so you'd feel more comfortable if you went with a friend who's taken that walk before. Most of my work with color is done with the people that I mentor. So I have something I call a life mentorship program. There's no curriculum, there's no reading required, and I'm not a big person on homework. So the color work takes very little. All that I am doing is taking a journey with a person, not as the doctor and the patient or the coach and the client. No, no, no. This is just a journey by two friends that happen to have met walking on the same road at the same time. I never advertise my services, so people get to me perhaps because their intuition guided them or someone referred them, but usually it's a good connection. It needs to be because the relationship with each other is the most impactful part. It's got to be a match made in heaven. So I don't work with people because they can pay me. I only engage with people on a mentorship level if I feel that I can support them in ways that are obvious and significant for them and by them. it's the reason we have teachers that are different one grade to the other when we're going through school is that the teacher you have the first year of school is not going to be the same teacher you have the sixth year of school. So my intuition is guiding me in terms of, am I the best person to work with this person? Sometimes I am, and sometimes I'm not. If it doesn't feel like a match made in heaven for both of us, I don't proceed in that way because my work is not superficial. It's very, very deep. And not everyone uh, desires that or is ready for that. Every level of practitioner, there's a place for them because each person needs a different thing. One person may just want, I want to improve my eyesight. Can you help me with that? For people that are looking for those kinds of things, if they consult with me, I will send them links where they can purchase what they need from Amazon, for instance, and do it at home. And I usually give them the name of a qualified optometrist in their area that they should consult with first as well. Um, so most of the time, I'm not working with people that um, are looking to fix something. There is a place for fixing, but I'm not that person any longer. And so I let them go to someone that does that every single day, and they're very, very good at it.
Mm.
I haven't done that kind of work in many, many, many years. Now, when I mentor people, I may address other things that could be helpful for them. But uh, my work these days is based on something simple. We've all been well trained to become successful at becoming someone when we grow up, at being successful in business or becoming a rock star because you have a new song or whatever. Few of us are successful at living. That's what really moves me. That's the only thing that I feel that I know by heart right now that I can share with people is the blessing of the fact that my life is my meditation. So that's a little bit um, about how I work with people and the system that I utilize. And some people can do this at home on their own in response to your question, but I don't typically recommend that because it's very deep work. And when we're doing deep work, it's good to have a hand to hold.
Absolutely. And my sense is, even if you use biofeedback, which you did early on, uh, you could create a device which has that biofeedback, so it could quickly determine through the different colors what your response was. Um, but I wonder, that could be a really efficient technique, but I wonder also whether there would be a level of experience lost as well.
Well, what you said is true. Easier said than done. I have attempted for many, many years to create a system that monitored one's response to different portions of the spectrum and monitored it so accurately that it backed off the moment it sensed anything was going on. And it came in and out so that the person gradually was able to receive it. I've also looked at systems that related that to what was happening with their health. However, it's a very complicated situation. There are sensors that do all kinds of things. Are they at a level that they can pick up what's significant from the noise, the background stuff that's being picked up? I'm not sure. I've been looking for that for years. I've put together teams of people to do that repeatedly. It's not easy. Integrity is everything to me, and it's a very pure thing for me. And when you're developing something, that's when science and art attempt to marry business. Business is often a different set of rules. And I have found over the years that very often you'll get into such a project and all of a sudden money comes into it or this or that, and you end up with a lot of problems. I have developed 3 different vision training tools. I've developed 3 or 4 different light therapy devices. And the reason I have distilled it down to the current spectral receptivity system, which is not a device, it's a series of different simple glasses that someone can use, is because these projects are very complicated, very expensive, and often problems arise. And I wouldn't, I'm glad that I had all these experiences. It gave me an education. Now, at the age of 78, I would have to be really coerced to go into another project like that. The current system I have is simple, it's affordable, and it's effective. I like that combination. You know, when I had light therapy devices that sold for just under $5,000, they were always the state of the art at the time. And they were very, very effective, but it was limited. It required a practitioner who studied and learned and so on. And right now, the science I'm most interested in is the science of life. Light, for me, is a doorway into life that can very powerfully impact people. And, the light entering the eyes goes to the hypothalamus of the brain, which is the site of the suprachiasmatic nucleus. That's the primary biological clock in the body. Every cell has a little watch in it, but the grandfather clock is the one in the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And that information is shared with the pineal. That the pineal is not only in the center of the brain, it's singular. It's not like two different hemispheres. There's only one, and it has to do with oneness. It is the regulator of most other regulators in the body. And the pineal takes that information about light and the Earth's electromagnetic field. What time of the day is it, or the night? Are we in Australia or in Bangladesh? And then it guides every cell in the body simultaneously to orchestrate its internal function in order to synchronize itself with the cosmos. In other words, the purpose of light, the primal purpose, is to bring us into a state of oneness with life. What is oneness? Oneness is not when I like this and I don't like that. Oneness is when my receptivity to life is total. It doesn't mean that I'm going to feel good when things in life occur that are unpleasant. But I begin to see life in a very, very different way. And that's why light and enlightenment are in some way related. And that for me is what's very important. And it's not spiritual. It's the art of being a human being. It's the art of living a life where we touch everything we come in contact with.
Hmm. So well said.
Thank
Now,
you.
I listened to an interview that you had with Manisha, and she was saying, well, yeah, I think during that interview, you said that uh, due to the miraculous healing of your eyesight, you really, from that point onward, it was about discovering the source of contentment and optimal wellness. So perhaps if you could just speak about the connection between those two words, the contentment and the optimal wellness, and what you've found in that regard.
Well, I wore glasses for 9.5 years. I was nearsighted. I had a significant amount of astigmatism. And before this experience in 1976, if I removed my glasses, I could see the big E at the top of the chart. That was it. I had to drive with my glasses. My license said so. I go in to meditate one day, which I started doing in the early 70s. My eyes are closed. But I can see everything in the room clearly, including Jacob sitting in the room. Not only was everything crystal clear, optically, everything was clear. There were no questions, no chatter in the mind, everything silenced. It was as if everything was known, but I didn't know what any of that meant. And whatever was noticing seemed to be able to notice from every point in the room at the same time. So it wasn't like I can see you in my monitor and you can see me. It was as if something was holographic, occurring everywhere. Now, it's interesting that quantum mechanics speaks about functions like that at the quantum level. But they say, oh, that doesn't occur in everyday life. That's not true. That experience that I had resulted in a 300% improvement in eyesight with no change to the optics of my eyes. I examined myself, and the astigmatism and the nearsightedness was there. Now, that was 76, so well, that's 50 years ago. For 50 years, I haven't worn glasses. It wasn't a momentary change. Something really shifted. Now, I have my eyes examined yearly, and I'm no longer nearsighted. Now I'm farsighted to the same degree I used to be nearsighted, and I have even more astigmatism. But the doctors can't understand how I can still read the chart easily. Not only at distance, but reading as well. Most 78-year-olds are wearing reading glasses. The point I'm making to you is people say to me, "What did you do?" I said, "Nothing at all. I have no idea." But something went into a state that shifted everything. And I've always had the feeling that that state might be the place from where spontaneous remissions occur. And I spent years thinking that that was some sort of a state of mind. I could not find any state of mind to replicate that. And what is contentment about? You know, Andrew, every day I go out into the world. Frequently, I go to a little coffee shop nearby to have a latte or something, maybe late morning, early afternoon. And when I'm out in the world, I've come to discover that life is looking for me. Of course, we've been led to believe that our eyes are for looking at what we want or what we don't want, and so on. But when we're focused on looking, we don't notice what's looking for us. And what I realize is what catches our eye is looking for us. Why? It's guiding us to the next step of our journey in life. And so when something grabs my attention, I notice it moves me there. It might be to speak to a stranger that I've never seen before, or to interact with a dog or a small child. This happens to me every single day, and it always brings me to a very special moment where I feel gratefulness for my existence, where I feel like there's magic, that I don't have to think or figure stuff out, that life is continually moving me where I need to be. That's, for me, what contentment is all about. Um, it's and it's also shifted so many of the things I imagine in regards to sight, that people are focused on improving eyesight. But this is a whole different level of vision. It's a much deeper level of vision. And when we take the pressure off our eyes about seeing, and we begin to see from this other place, maybe it's the pineal, all of a sudden there's a level of contentment that comes with it. And with that contentment often comes a greater level of wellness. And that for me is what life is all about. And so that's what I love to engage in these days.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Beautifully said. And so, yeah, I mean, as you said, you're nearly 80 years old, right?
Yeah.
And but you're still actively doing things. You got your own projects still, and uh, you know, what is exciting you at the moment in terms of what you're
I'm
doing?
working, I am working with my daughter on my memoir, where I share many, many things that really impacted me, but that have never been shared before. And the title of that book, just between you and I, is Home at Last. And that's got me excited because I feel like the sharing of many of the things we spoke about today um, is so important because it resonates with us at a deeper level than just, oh, that's an interesting idea. And so that's something that's exciting to me. And one of the nice things about that excitement is that it will probably take me back out into the world to share. And I love that experience. And what I love about sitting with a group of people and sharing is that I never know what's going to be shared because it is totally unprepared, just like my life. It's live. I mean, we did this interview, but neither one of us knew what was going to occur. I feel deeply touched by the magic of how a question enters your awareness, and wherever that question came to you, a response comes from that same place to me. I don't have to think about it. I have no idea what's going to come out. I have no concern about it. Um, I mean, I haven't prepared for a talk in 49 years at all. And I mean, some of those talks are 2 week events, residential events. I haven't done those in years now, but the point I'm making is that we think we have to prepare everything in advance, and it's stressful as hell. I don't prepare anything, and it has a life of its own. And it shares whatever needs to be shared, which I couldn't figure out in advance. And it always begins and ends exactly when it needs to. I remember when I was invited to do a TED talk, and they said the talk has to be 18 minutes, it has to be prepared, and so on. And I said, well, I won't be able to do it then. Why is that? I don't prepare anything. What? What do you mean you don't prepare anything? Isn't that a bit irresponsible? I said, I don't know what the audience needs to hear until I actually stand or sit before them and then wait. Anyway, I did this TED talk without a preparation. And I remember the last word came out of my mouth, and my eyes looked down because they have this big digital device that gives you the time. The last word came out, and then the zero came up. And I was like, oh my God, we've been led to believe we have to figure out life. You know, in life and in biology, timing is everything. It's a level of precision we couldn't even begin to match. And all these things that we think we have to think about and resolve, they occur on their own so often. And it makes life so much more pleasurable.
Mm.
I think light and what we interpret as color is a major key in coming to that place in our life.
Wow. So there's so many more questions I'd love to ask you, like based on what you've already said, but it's been long enough. And, it really has been a pleasure talking with you, Jacob.
Thank
And
you. The pleasure is mutual. And, you know, when small children have fun, usually they say to their parents, can I do that again? So we can do this again. And we can cover any questions that you feel I might be able to share something of benefit for. So please know anytime you ask, there'll only be one response. Of course.
yeah, beautiful. Much appreciated, Jacob. And I wanted to say as well that I have always been struck by your ability to speak from the heart with clarity, without preparation. And you've done that again today. As an honorary board member of the ILA, I've always noticed that your communications have always been graceful and loving and quick as well. You're always doing it in a timely way. And the way you respond in that, it always feels very wise, and we really appreciate what you've done in that role.
My pleasure. I realize I am slowing down at this time of my life on certain levels, but I have a deep love and affection for ILA, and I really want to fertilize it as much as I can because the kinds of communications and discussions and things that we share with each other are so important for the world to share. Yeah, I love ILA.
Beautiful. All right, thank you, and we'll speak again.
I can't wait. Have a grateful day. Thank you so much for everything you're doing for ILA and have done for all the years you've been doing it.
Blessings.
All right, my friend. We'll speak soon.